I would like to say hello and thank you very much to all of our panelists, of which we have quite a few. First of all, I would like to also thank Casson Consulting and Daniel for sponsoring the session today. And like I said, all of the panelists for joining. We're going to start with quite a big and broad question. So I hope there'll be lots of interesting ideas there. And the question is, what do you see as the biggest structural challenge in adult social care today? Who would like to go first? Right, Kirsty?
Hello, everybody. It's Kirsty Simmons from Connect to Care. I think so. We've done a few of these panels this week, and there's obviously a recurring theme that's coming from within the sector itself, and we're trying to raise our profile more and get more people in power, should we say, to get the understanding around what social care is. And so I think one of the biggest structural challenges that I see is people necessarily that are in the sector actually understanding what care is, because care can be so many different things. Variety really is the spice of life. We're literally working with society, and every walk of society that you can think of will be in receipt of care, which means every care package is individual. Therefore, it changes, it fluctuates. So the biggest structural challenge is for people outside of the sector that maybe are the decision makers or the influencers when it comes to how it's funded or how it grows or how it's perceived, understanding that it's not a neat little box, and it doesn't need to be. We don't want care to be this neat little box. You know, we want the diversity. We want to celebrate how it's so unique, the uniqueness, and that can go day to day, hour to hour, and that is how it is, and that's what we want it to be. I'm just not sure how we get policymakers, maybe I might be a bit unfair saying that, policymakers, decision makers to understand that that's okay. That's how it's meant to be. You know, it's there's no set business formula for this. It's for the people, by the people, and that's what we want. So that would be my first concern in terms of our first observation for the structural challenge that we've got, is getting people to understand it, the variety.
Thanks a lot, Kirsty. And Daniel?
Thank you. Kirsty, thank you. I agree with what you say. The biggest structural point is what people don't know about social care. And one of the issues there is for social care to speak not with one voice, because you said there's various parts of it, but speak with a voice that people can hear. And I ran a round table earlier this week, and it was so clear that the different parts of the care sector maybe want different things themselves. So I think we still have some work to do on refining our message. In a way, I hate to be talking in some of these terms, but in a way, it's a branding thing, that we need to be able to have brand social care, which is asking for certain specific things. And then, because we know the care workers and the professionals in care are doing such a great job, but in various different formats and places, that we need to get that message over, that we're focused on the well-being and the health of everybody, the independent people, for helping people to live independent lives and for their better well-being, and so that we're working to the better well-being of the society and community. And how do we get that over?
Thanks a lot, Daniel. And Michelle?
Following on from what Daniel was just saying, you know, I've spoken about this in many events over my career. Why aren't care workers registered with a PIN? We'd have so much more respect, you know, like nurses do, and social workers are on, you know, another framework to prove that they are professionals. The problem is people just quite rightly don't know what we do because we don't celebrate it enough. The press just share the negative stories when things go wrong. CQC are only really advertising when things go wrong. But what about the things that go right every single day, every single minute, to every single individual that receives care in one way or another? And those care professionals, you know, they're disregarded, you know, they're given benefits, but that doesn't make them professionals, does it? They just feel like, oh, I'm just a care worker. I'm just a carer.
Thank you very much, Michelle. And just reminds me, I think the whole positive, negative stories in the media about social care around COVID and all the hard work, everything's done. The main story really that's made it to press was how many people died in care homes.
Yeah.
But nobody bothered to say how many people's lives were saved in care homes by hard work of everybody involved. And I think that's a very good example of the interest of the public or the focus of the media on the stories in social care. Thank you. Debbie?
Morning, everyone. Debbie Cuts, Hearts at Home. I think for me, you said it, Carolina, and also the last two speakers as well. I think there is, aside from which I'm sure we'll discuss today, the recruitment and retention challenges, I think linked to that is around the professionalism of the workforce, as Michelle just alluded to. And then I think Daniel's point was really key, because I think there are two elements for me, really. It's around the professionalism, but also the purpose. And you just referenced that in COVID. And I think whilst for all of us that have been in the care sector for many, many years and those delivering frontline services, I think we've kind of forgotten the actual impact that that had on the sector. And as you say, it was referenced in terms of perhaps the number of lives that were lost, but there are some fantastic stories that I know that I've heard from colleagues and co-workers about the impact and the differences that they made. And I think for me, that's really underlining the purpose and making sure that people externally really understand the true value of what we all as organisations and individuals on this call and people listening in do deliver every day.
Thank you, Debbie. And Paul?
Yeah, hi, Paul Hay from Paragon Skills. Yeah, just to echo Daniel and Debbie's points there, actually, I think part of the biggest challenge is around the fragmentation of some of the messaging that comes out. There are so many underlying challenges across the system that many voices are trying to solve, and quite rightly so, but bringing that together to Daniel's point about really improving and communicating what the purpose of the sector is for and how we go about that collectively, delivering against that promise around, you know, supporting people living individual lives or whatever it may be, I think is hugely important, and all of the other points that feed into that. But having that overarching common goal, having that messaging and a common voice around what we're doing, I think is really important moving forward to cut through a lot of, whether it's policy, whether it's underinvestment, whether it's workforce pressures. The underlying purpose remains the same, and that's got to come to the forefront above and beyond the individual challenges that we see.
Thank you, Paul. And Lara?
Thank you. Everyone's speaking so much common sense. I'm Lara Bywater from LDC Care Co. I think we're kind of, as a sector, stuck in a loop. And Daniel and Graham, you're absolutely correct. We do need to align some key messages, but then we also need to be very smart about who those messages are for and how we actually deliver those messages. And actually, it's not new, and lots of us have said this for many years. One of the key things we need to do is to educate young people from primary school age that actually working in the care sector is an awesome career. It is a career. It's not a job you do when you have no other options, and there are many opportunities, and we've already heard from Kirsty about how diverse care is. So I do think that we need to really think very cleverly about how we organise ourselves to actually be able to give those messages to, and who those messages are for. And we do that by celebrating the awesomeness that happens every single day. And we could be overwhelmed with positive stories just by, I'm sure we could all think of 10 things that happened in our own organisations yesterday and share those. And I know Skills for Care have done some good stuff around celebrating social care, but unfortunately we do have that blocker with mainstream media focusing on those more negative elements of social care. So that's my thoughts around it.
Thank you, Lara. And I also see in the chat, Daniel put about the care badge that was launched. That was before COVID, it was launched, and then was taken over by DHSC in COVID. I spoke to somebody, at the meeting at DHSC on Wednesday. And like personally, I'm quite sure that Matt Hancock wearing it during COVID was the death of the care badge. And I'm not sure if we can recover from that image and association with that, but it was something
Yeah.
but we definitely need something to.
Can I add something, Carolina? Sorry, I'm
Yes,
not
of course.
supposed
No, yeah. Graham, do
Sorry.
you mind? Atiyah can't use the raise hand function. Is that okay? Thank you, Atiyah.
Thank you very much, everybody, and good morning. I just would like to add, as Lara just mentioned, that we need to speak to young people and tell them, like, you know, the care is a whole profession and it's very rewarding. At the same time, as adults, like I work as a care assistant, and I have got my colleagues who try to hide their professional identity. And they say, oh, when we go out, we don't tell people. I don't tell people that I'm a carer because they look down upon you. And, you know, so I think the stigma which has been attached to the care, we just need to eliminate it somehow. I don't know how we're going to make that happen, but together we are taking steps and the steps in the right direction. That until and unless that stigma is not eliminated and we are wearing that badge very proudly, that yes, we are the carers, we are, you know, helping people, and it's very rewarding. It's a very rewarding career. I don't know how will we be able to convince our young generation to join care as professionals, you know, as a career. And then one of my colleagues was speaking here about retention, recruitment and retention. And I think that is the thing that mentally, yes, we are psychologically, emotionally, we're very happy with carers. It's very rewarding. But at the same time, if you're not happy with what we're doing and we're not fully convinced, the retention will be always low. It will be always, there will be always a big gap, a huge gap in the market, because people come, you know, either they are burnt out or they're, you know, the wage is not good, or they're not being respected as they were expected to be respected in this society, in the community. I think it will always be an issue of recruitment and retention as well. So I think it's just all linked with each other. But I think the first thing is we just really truly need to detach that, remove the stigma attached with the carers or the care profession.
Thank you very much, Atiyah. That's very helpful, and I think care workers' point of view is so important in all of this. Graham.
Good morning, Graham Harper from Virgin Money's Health and Social Care team. So I suppose I'll look at this slightly differently, and I suppose the thing I think of is the underfunding in the sector. There's a huge disparity between sort of local authority fees and private fees, and that gap is just widening constantly. And, you know, the battle operators have to go through to even get an annual fee increase with local authorities, and that can range anything, you know, we've seen from sort of 1% to maybe 7 or 8% and everything in between. Yeah, you know, I think that needs an area of tackling just to bring sort of a level playing field to everybody, because, you know, the local authorities expect you to look after an individual, yet you could go and hire a Premier in for a week and it would cost more to stay there. You get no care, you get no food or services or anything, and yet the local authority sort of expect you to look after an individual or loved one for a much lower fee. So yeah, from my perspective, it is that sort of underfunding within the sector, really.
Thank you very much, Graham. I've had it compared to many things, not yet to Premier Inn, so that was interesting, and I think quite a striking comparison, isn't it? Thank you. Veronica?
Hi, good morning, Veronica Anthony David from Avanti Care and so forth. So yes, I wanted to say something similar to Graham to start off with, that the funding is an issue. So if there's a solution to look at how we reform funding to make it more sustainable, and so that there's not dependence on just local authorities, you know, when crises hit, because I think funding has an impact on what you pay staff and all the rest. But I also wanted to talk about the brand of social care itself. And this is something everyone keeps talking about. And maybe a solution is that and I know, Daniel, maybe this has been done before, but that we get all the key players together and we invest in a solid PR strategy. And that covers different areas, not just getting young people. It covers even the brand, the care. What is it? I think one of my colleagues mentioned this before. Because if I use the example of when we've done international recruitment, I said to some of my colleagues, I said, when I was in engineering, we used international recruitment. It was respected. I brought in project engineers from different countries. They were treated very, very well. We gave them relocation packages. They were not looked down on because we understood that we had a skill gap and we needed them. Now, fast forward, we've done the same with nurses, we've done the same with carers. It's a different ballgame. People look down on them. And that is a problem because the work that they do is so hard, yet people look down on them. So there's a branding issue that we have to resolve somehow. And I'm just like, sometimes I hate talking and talking and talking. I'm like, let's just get to work. Let's invest. I don't know how we do it, but I know Daniel and your team, amazing. Maybe we can get a really good PR engine behind us and look at different aspects and become more solution oriented. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. That's very helpful. Various attempts have been made, I think, at unifying social care under one brand and joint PR strategies. But I think what some others said on the panel earlier, different parts of the sector also want different things. And I think the number one problem potentially around that is people actually agreeing on what the strategy is and then how to take it forward. Right, thank you very much, everybody, on this question. I'd like to move us on to the next one. That's something we've had a roundtable with the HSE a couple of times about now. We discussed on our other panels, and that's delegated health tasks, delegated health activities. It seems that the department and ministers are very keen for that to become an even bigger part of social care, for more and more care workers to be taking on those duties from registered professionals such as nurses, OTs, physios. So I'll be very interested to hear what you think about, well, is it working right now or not? How could it be managed to keep care workers safe and make it fair for them? Because we hear a lot about care workers being asked to perform those duties, but not getting the training or not getting the right training, a lot of them not getting paid more for doing those tasks. So yes, I'd be very interested to hear your opinions on delegated health tasks. Michelle.
Hi, thank you for inviting me in on to respond to this question. It's something that I've been very passionate of. So just to give you a bit of background, I've been with Prosperity just a short period of time. I have a 30-year career in health and social care, and I'm very, very proud of it. For me, it doesn't matter what title I am, I'm a carer. So now I'll just move forward to delegated healthcare tasks. So pre-COVID, up here in Gloucestershire, when I was working with another business, it was domiciliary care. I was working closely with the NHS and Proud to Care, and we wanted to develop a delegated healthcare task training program. So we started with that, COVID kicked in. I'm a very determined woman, you know, Welsh background, of course, I'm going to be determined, and I can be quite stubborn, but very, very passionate at the same time. So I then approached the CEOs. I might as well say I was with Home Instead, you know, one of the biggest brands in the United Kingdom and globally for private care. And so I approached them and they said, right, go ahead, we'll link up with you, we'll see what we can do. You know, you're passionate about it, it should happen. And the reason that I believed it should happen is at the age of 16, when I first started care back in the days of YTS, okay, I've long nails, had long nails then, had no training, no risk assessments, and I was dressing open wound, packing, seeing spinal columns. Okay, so this is serious wound dressing at the age of 16. No gloves, no aprons, no masks, no nothing, right? Life has changed and that is great. But I always hold on to, I could do that then, and I did it then, but I want to do it better. I want my staff to feel valued, have a high retention rate, and reduce the amount of traffic sometimes going in and out of people's houses. You know, people waiting for their blood glucose to be tested by a district nurse and they can't take their insulin, then that has an impact on their whole day and their medication program. So I ended up going and working in collaboration with CBAT training. I then ran the first pilot project with them. During COVID, I had hired a hotel and it was amazing. We all qualified and, you know, we went on to provide that service quite rightly. But the other bits that I'm really proud of is 2 of those staff, one went on to be a paramedic So we kept it within health and social care. Even though they left the business, they went on. And the other one now works at my doctor's practice and is a phlebotomist and really helps even more people. Delegated healthcare tasks can be achieved. You have to have the right governance, the right policies, and you have to have a nurse trainer either on bank or somewhere within your business. These are easily achieved. And I chose 10 carers who had no clinical background, who hadn't been in the care sector for 30 years like myself, to see how it would impact them, how they felt with that level of responsibility and accountability. You know, and I can tell you now today, it is very, very successful. The challenges I faced were the policies that were written by local authority, that even when I started it and I was working with, you know, the NHS at that point, or in collaboration with them, they still hadn't updated the personal care policy. CQC was a challenge in relation to the TDDI registration, which I got 3 weeks before COVID. So I absolutely needed it. And I had a very, very, very supportive nominated, as you had back then, CQC inspector. It is difficult. It's hard to change the perception of care, and it's hard to introduce new ways of working. But I tell you, it pays off. It absolutely pays off. And I'm very, very passionate about delegated health tasks. And none of us got sued. Nothing went wrong, all because we had those SOPs in place. There was training, there were supervisions, there were sign-offs, you know, so it was done very, very legally and very, very, you know, open and transparent to all the other services. So yeah, I'm very passionate about it, and it can be achieved.
Thank you, Michelle. Can I ask a couple of questions? First of all, the co-workers that did it, did they have a choice to say, no, I didn't want to do it?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
I put it out to the staff. So I had a staff team of around about 200. So I was overseeing 7 franchises, and they all had the opportunity. I put it all down. I said, this is what you'd be responsible for. So I wanted to be very, very transparent. You know, you would be, you know, dealing with blood and wounds and, you know, all those things that, you know, normally a district nurse would come in and achieve with an individual. So they absolutely had choice. I didn't. It was a battle because so many people wanted to do it, and I wanted to pull from different areas of the business, if that makes sense. Like a brand new carer who'd only been with us like 3 months, but had passed probation and had shown, you know, really good competencies and capabilities and confidence, up to one of my registered care managers that did it. So I wanted it to be really diverse so I could capture that information and see how it affected them. So yeah.
And one more question, did they get extra pay once
They
they
did.
completed the training? Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. So when they were delivering those services, absolutely, they were. So when they were just doing normal personal care or normal companionship or taking somebody out, that was the standard rate. But when they were, you know, supporting somebody with their insulin and blood glucose, or they were packing and changing a dressing, they were paid a different rate of pay, yes. And
Thank
that was
you.
hard because the local authority didn't pay any more. My
Okay.
private clients did, so it was a balance.
Okay.
But local authority, there was no increased pay.
They wouldn't acknowledge that it's a change in the level of responsibility.
Even though they asked us to do it, and they knew very clearly. So brokerage, CHC, the NHS and the commissioners, they all knew we were doing it, and they were on board with us, but there was no money in the pot, and I get it. But the retention of those staff, that was really important to make them feel valued. And they were really proud. Can I just say they were really proud? And they were like, I'm a healthcare, you know, care worker, and I'm a professional and I can do this. That's why I believe that whole PIN registration is really important. We do the DBSs, so they're registered somewhere. It doesn't take any more time to have a PIN, especially when we go on and do those delegated healthcare tasks.
Thank you, Michelle. Sam, I had you as having your hand up. Now it's disappeared. Okay, Sam's disappeared off my screen. Sam, if you still want to speak, you can come back in a minute. Kirsty?
Hello. I just love the whole question and premises about delegated healthcare tasks, and that is the way it's been going, and it is the future for health and social care. That's going to be the bridge where, when we've talked on different panels and things before, we know as a sector that social care is one of the biggest ways you'll save the NHS. We know this, and this is part of it. We know that district nurses are struggling. And I think the exciting bit is what Michelle's just talked about. From my view as a helicopter view of the sector, there are parts where we are doing this as a sector, but by stealth. So nobody really knows that it's happening. It's not funded properly. It's not. And the key bit of that question was to keep it safe for the workers as well. And this is my concern, that we're potentially doing a lot of this by stealth. And because we're a great sector that responds and reacts and we help and we'll do all of this on a shoestring. God, I sound so negative. I don't mean to. It's fantastic what they do. And I think where I work with our employers, it's about what are the delegated health tasks that you're looking for and who's signing that off? Because not every employer, as Michelle said, has a registered nurse on site that will put their name to signing off, whereas organisations like Connect to Care, that's where we support. And you know, a range of delegated healthcare tasks might be something quite niche to one employer that requires it because of the service users' needs that they're caring for at the time. It's very fluctuating. There can be a base list, definitely, but it can be very fluctuating. And I'm really pleased, Michelle, that you said it wasn't for everybody. People got to say yes or no, because I don't think delegated tasks are for everybody. A bit like mental health support isn't for everybody. But what we have got in the sector as a whole is great people across the board with a range of specialisms that, you know, when we champion that right, which we often do within the health and social care, we get it right every single time. And what I do worry about is the stealth bit, that are we doing it and nobody really knows, or they're quite happy to not acknowledge that we're doing it. That does worry me a little bit, and that comes back to the procurement bit, the funding bit. If we're being asked to do it, why are we not being funded to do it? I think that's a big question that takes us back to the structural challenges within health and social care. It is health and social care, so it needs to be looked at from both by people who are making these decisions. We can't continue to deliver more and more on less and less, because that is when it becomes unsafe for the clients, service users, and unsafe for the care workers. And it goes back to Atia's point. If, as a care worker, doesn't celebrate sometimes what they do, are we putting people more at risk by asking them to do more with potentially less? So it's a future thing. My last point, and then I'll shut up, I promise. When we talk about rebranding and getting the message out there, this whole piece about delegated healthcare tasks is the opportunity for a new message to be given externally, which is where the work needs to be done. It's a new opportunity for us to be able to do that. Let's get this message right from the start and not, as a sector, take on more tasks for less. Let's, bounce this back. Let's get the policymakers involved. Let's get skills for health, skills for care involved, and work together, not in little silos, but as one sector. We went on the march, one sector, one voice. We can do this because we did it that day. We can absolutely do it. So that would be my thing. It's an opportunity as well.
Thank you, Kirsty. I just remembered this morning I read an email from DHSC about a joint executive board now for the NHS England and the HSC. So I'm wondering where that's going to take things. Reading through the execs, I have to say it was very light on the social care side. So we'll have to see where that goes. But I think, yes, the whole point of, if we are asked by the NHS, or if we're asked by the local authorities, why isn't the money following? Why is the expectation it will be delivered on the unsustainable funding that's in place at the moment? Lara?
Thank you. Yeah, I actually agree that this could be a really great opportunity, because we do have large parts of the workforce who are keen to increase their skill set from an already very skilled workforce. In particular, I think about the people we support, and we support people with learning disability, mental health, and autism. And actually, it's far less disruptive and chaotic and confusing for them if the people that are mainly caring for them and supporting them on a daily basis are the people that have built the trust, the relationships, that are then doing those more complex tasks. But I absolutely agree, Kirsty. we're doing it by stealth, and we build these wonderful relationships with the people we support, the families, and the social workers, district nurses, other professionals as part of the MDTs. And we take those responsibilities on, and then we find ourselves doing them with governance we hope in reality is good enough. And no one really is there to validate that. And it is potentially really dangerous. We had a situation fairly recently where somebody has very, very complex diabetes with a learning disability and mental health issues and will not engage with the district nurses. So if nobody's going to do it, it will be left to us as the care and support workers. And we have tried to get the local authority and the local NHS representatives around the table to say, how do we do this safely for everybody? How do we do it so that we have good governance? And how do we reflect that additional responsibility? And of course, that's like tumbleweed. Nobody really wants to have those conversations. But of course, in the middle of that, there is a young gentleman who desperately needs that care and support. So we're there bridging the gap and hoping that we're doing it in the safest way that we can. They wouldn't even allow us to access training. They've told us to go and find training for the staff rather than accessing existing NHS training for those individuals to be able to create that skill level. So I think it could be a real opportunity, but without the pound notes following, we just can't do it properly. We could do it. We all know we could do it, and there will be appetite to do it from the workforce, but we can't, it's not okay to ask us to do it without everything in place. And I'm not negative.
No, thank you very much, Lara. I think it's quite striking that, there's an individual that needs support now, and you're hearing nothing back and you're having to sort it out yourself. But if something goes wrong, it's going to come back to you, isn't it? I think that's what we've heard a lot from care workers over the years as well. It's like, of course we want to do it. Of course we want to support the person we're working with to the best of our ability. But if training and other things aren't in place, or even when they are, it still ends up, if something goes wrong, goes back to the care worker, and that is a big problem. Paul, and then Atia, please.
Yeah, it was just to echo a lot of the points that have been said before. So, we work in kind of the education of the adult social care sector, and one thing I can say is there's a huge appetite across the sector to do this. And I think the term used earlier is by stealth. It is happening all day, every day, but there is a huge nervousness around that as well. And that nervousness is based on lack of governance, lack of clarity around governance, lack of clear accountability in terms of roles and responsibilities. So even outside of the funding issue, structurally, there is work that needs to be done to be able to clarify the elements of governance and quality assurance internally that allows it to happen more freely, and give the individuals the confidence, so they're not left legally or professionally exposed in terms of some of the tasks that they're taking on. And one thing that does give me hope that I think is fantastic is, to Michelle's point, she's proven that it can work, and with the right structure, the right process, but more importantly, with Michelle's passion around making it happen, we can transform the workforce to be able to support this particular area. Yes, funding is an issue. Funding is always going to be an issue, but I think it comes down to the passion and the desire of the individuals within those particular areas that can make a difference to create the governance, the structures, the accountability, and the support mechanisms to protect those individuals that do have the desire to do it.
Thank you very much, Paul. And obviously from Michelle today and other times where I've heard it working well, it has been about having a nurse as part of the organization delivering those tasks. Obviously, these tasks aren't limited to what we may want to call, nursing duties. There are parts of occupational therapy or physiotherapy that care workers do as well, and other tasks. But I think having that person there inside the company makes a very big difference from what I've heard from different organizations that have done it very successfully. Atia?
Yeah, I just would like to add this, Caroline, that as we have been speaking about the delegated tasks, like the place where I have been working, I mean, I personally just started as a care worker, and now we are the care workers, we are the housekeepers. I'm the gardener as well. I have to look after the garden, and then bizarre enough that we had the lady I'm looking after for, her sugar level has been playing up and down because she's peg fed. We looking after her, peg cleaning, rotating the peg and whatnot. District vet nurses visited and they said, oh, her sugar level has been playing up. It could be very fatal because it was very, very low, and advised us to order a glucose monitor and start monitoring the glucose level as well. Now we're doing that, we're doing all the OBS, all the medication, and everything. And none of them even ask us, have you been trained? Do you have enough training? And of course, that's a human life. I mean, I have been just pushed into the deep end, just thrown into the water, and we have to swim because we can't say no. And then she's getting palliative care. Well, the nurses will only visit once a month, and rest of the thing, it's just only to the carers. When the palliative care nurses, they visited, so we asked them, like, can you help us with the enemas, or how often will you be coming? You know, now with the glucose level and everything. And they said, we only visit once a month, and rest of the tasks you carers have to do every day and monitor. Our wages hasn't been increased. The job specification has never been changed, no trainings, and it just keep on adding in the list, like what we need to do, like we did yesterday, now we're doing a little bit more today, and then, you know, the day after tomorrow is going to be more. So I don't know, I really can't get my head around how things are going to change. Like, either there should be a specific job requirement which carers need to do, and that's it. They cannot do anything more than what they are capable of doing, to be honest. As in my case, I never have been, the trainings I had previously, maybe about 10 years ago or 15 years ago, and then just learning every day from the colleagues, or, you know, watching YouTube videos. But, you know, I never have been provided with any training, which, I mean, I don't know, when we speak to our employer, she says, I don't have enough funding to send 10 carers to a training. So you just have to do it, just, you know, just learn yourself and do it. And it's quite hard, it's quite risky, because we know if anything happens, it will be the social workers getting involved, the family, you know, they will be asking us questions. But when we need help, there is no help available. When we ask for the training, it's a complete no. You know, so I think there is a serious issue which needs to be addressed ASAP rather than just leaving it a bit longer.
Thank you, Atia, and I'm very sorry to hear that this is your experience, and unfortunately we're hearing that this is an experience of many care workers. Training or lack of training is something that comes up all the time. Training, and let alone supervision, because delegated health tasks are supposed to be regularly supervised as well, and just doesn't happen. We've heard from you, we've heard from many care workers, oh yeah, go on YouTube and watch it, or another care worker teaching the other care worker, which isn't
Yeah.
delegation. Delegation needs to be from a registered professional. So there's a lot of that going on. That's why we are very worried about the HSE trying to escalate it, or rather scale it up for more people to be doing it, because it doesn't seem like at the moment there is enough. I think an important point you made at the beginning as well, and I think it particularly applies to community care, that a care worker in the community doesn't just perform care tasks. You are the therapist and the gardener and the cook and the cleaner and the dog walker and whatever else. And even that is too much, because it isn't really in most people's job descriptions to be looking after somebody's garden, because you are there to be looking after, to be supporting the person. So thank you very much for sharing. Danya, I saw you shake your head when she said she was the gardener as well. So.
Yes, yeah, I did. I mean, that creep is really dangerous. I mean, Lara first mentioned it, and then that creep of that expectation that of the jobs people do, I think, is really dangerous. And Tia just attested to that really, and made it horribly. I mean, the thing in the chat was interesting from Marilyn, where she says, you know, with delegated care tasks, if you apply for a certain role, shouldn't you be ready to do the assigned tasks? I've tried to respond, but there's people better qualified than I to respond on this. And I said yes to a point. However, care workers have to be empowered to say no if you don't feel confident or feel you don't have the training. And that's some of the thing you said there. So I'm not sure what Marilyn's point is there, but other people might have other points. And for me, it's all about, in that we taking the wider system, it's about, we have to get to a system. You mentioned our representation on different boards, Carolina, saying that actually the money for the care or the well-being of the person has to follow the person themselves, not the where they're getting the care. So in the delegated health tasks we're now doing tasks that used to have to be done in certain health arenas, so that if the funding actually followed the person, it would ensure that those health tasks were paid for decently, which I think is one of the issues.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Kirsty?
This might be a bit of a roundup point, but obviously the training and development side, as a carer since I was 16, I left school on the Friday and started in care on the Monday, and you know, I'm in my late 40s now. It's all I've ever done. Right now, the training and development side is where I've moved into, and it's my passion, it's my specialism, and it's listening to the employers. So I'm one of the sub-chairs for the Trailblazer Group. What does the sector actually want? And Atty, it broke my heart listening to what you talked about there, but that goes back to my point of we're doing it by stealth, because I know that that's happening all over. So there's no comfort to say you're not on your own in that, because the scary bit is you're not on your own in that happening. Maybe just a top tip for any employers that are listening to this: if you're in that situation where you can't train the staff to do this, and genuinely look around your community, because one of the things I do in the training is, if there's especially a community care company that might have 5 or 6 people, and a care home down the road that might have 2, and you know, another community down the street that might have 3, come together and you know, we'll support that community to get the training, so that it's not just falling on one employer that might have to train. You can share that around the sector, and I don't think we potentially do that enough. We once we shut our own doors, we kind of feel like we're facing everything on our own, and you're not. As a big sector, there's lots of us here, and you might find that under your local authority, there's 5 or 6 employers that you could all come together, and we can help you as a cohort rather than, you know, carrying everything. So that you're not carrying all the stress, all the responsibility and everything. You know, we'll do it together. Maybe that could help.
Thank you, Kirsty. I think that's a very helpful point, especially for us smaller, for SMEs, to look around and come together, because you've got a better way to negotiate of other things as well. Right, so I'd like to move on to another question, and that's around commissioning. Obviously, a lot of what we've discussed, the issue is money. Money is an issue from a central government, but it's also commissioning from local authorities. And it's always this kind of central government says, oh, it's down to local authorities. Local authorities say, oh, but the central government doesn't give us enough money. And they go and say, oh, but we give them money. And it's like a whole thing, isn't it? But I would like to hear what you think should be done around commissioning, and how we could make it more ethical. I think the thing that always worries me is when I hear that commissioners are granting contracts to providers just based on the amount of money. So people underbid each other, and they offer to deliver things on a lower and lower rate that everybody should know and knows aren't sustainable rates to be delivering care on, and then you don't have money for certain things. But then that seems to make local authorities think, well, if one person, one organization can deliver on that, we should be asking everybody to deliver on that. So that seems quite unhelpful. So what do you think should be done in terms of commissioning and helping local authorities understand what they're doing wrong and how they could do better? Kirsty, go. You're on the screen already.
Sorry.
It's all right. No. I appreciate it. Go on.
We did talk on a previous panel about we sometimes we get into a race to the bottom in terms of how we procure care, because there's providers there that'll just undercut, as you've just said, and do it for a lot less just to win the business, which then obviously puts pressure on everybody else. And I think as a sector, we need to all come together and not do that. My concern is, and somebody on here might actually know the answer to this more than potentially I will right now. Who makes up the people that commission this? So who, if in my organisation somebody outside of the specialism of health and social care tries to make a grand decision about health and social care business in any way, it lacks clarity, it lacks strategy, it lacks experience. I could poke holes in it in the first 20 minutes of starting the conversation, so much so that it just doesn't happen. They would come to the specialists from care to ask them a question that regards care. So when it comes to the commissioning, who's doing what, who's making the decisions? Are they people that know and have lived and breathed even, or understanding, or is it a money person that has an Excel spreadsheet? And I'm not putting them down, because we need money people to be able to do this, but I do often worry who's doing this, who's the people that make this decision, and where's the voice of the sector within that decision? Because we've had years of, decades even, gosh, I wish it were just years, of things being done to the sector, not with the sector, because we're seen as the and I'm not pulling the NHS down either. The NHS does what they do, but they obviously get the largest slice of the pie and get to sit and eat first. What the scraps then kind of be left for us, and we can see that that's not sustainable and not workable. I try and elbow myself into all these different things to find out who it is that's actually making these decisions, and see the whites of their eyes and what their credentials are, and ask them questions. And Nadra was on with us at the beginning of the week. You have 10-minute conversation with Nadra and you can quickly work out that she knows what she's talking about in health and social care. So who's making the decisions? That would be, I think that's where we need to look.
Thank you, Kirsty. Very good question. Lara.
Thank you, Kirsty. I think you're not alone in your observations of who's doing what and why and how. I would say that actually there needs to be some level of transparency in how we are working with commissioners, and it needs to go right back to the beginning, and we need to go back to basics. We need to remember that actually we should be, as a sector, whether we are commissioners or providers or part of any other part of the sector, always looking at people in that person-centered way. And that's become a phrase that's become overused and misunderstood and misrepresented, I feel, in many parts of the sector. So we do have to remember that these are human lives that we are being asked to ensure are given the best opportunity to live their best lives. What we find is actually we are forced into a situation where most of the commissioning, because there is that lack of expertise in some areas, and absolutely there are some fantastic commissioners across the country, that we end up in a time and task situation rather than looking at people as individuals and what they need to live their life. And yes, they may need support with personal care, but they may also have some emotional support. And of course, once you start to try and shoehorn things that are really untangible into contracts, it becomes very difficult to monitor. And then there's this mistrust and everything becomes very grey and misunderstood. I do also think that as a sector, we need to be much, much more robust at understanding the Care Act, because that will give us a really good way to have those difficult conversations. And sometimes it's uncomfortable for us as providers to have those conversations on behalf of the people that we're trying to support. And it goes to another point of a shortage of advocates that can actually support people themselves to have those conversations with social workers and commissioners about what they need, and to reference the Care Act in terms of how they get to where they need to be. So I do think there are solutions, but at the moment we've got many systems that have evolved based on need, based on local politics, based on local policies, rather than a really good approach to dynamic commissioning, which delivers fantastic care. So I think, again, it's an opportunity but it's a big piece of work to get there.
Thank you, Lara. I don't see any more hands up, so I'd like to move us on to retention and recruitment. And obviously, we know there are a lot of issues around that. For us at the Co-workers Charity, we always say retention is in many ways more important than recruitment, because it's keeping the people that already know what they're doing and they're doing it well, rather than getting new batches of people that may leave again in 6 months over and over and over again with this forever rotating door. But they're both very important. So who would like to start first on retention and recruitment, please? I can't believe nobody wants to talk about retention and recruitment.
I've got
there you go. I've got some hands. There you go. Kirsty, go, and then Paul.
We talked in previous events that we've done with the sector about the retention and recruitment piece, and really, if you start right from the beginning, it's how you ask and target people to come and work for your organisation. And as now somebody looking in a little bit more, if you say you're going to do something, do it. You can have the best, you know, as a business, the best website in the world, but commit yourself. If you're saying this is what the recruitment process will be like, this is what we'll do during your process and your journey, and linking it with the career pathways, then you need to make sure that you do it. So when we speak to some of our learners that come with us on that journey, sometimes they've come to us and been little bit let down because they were promised A, B, and C and barely made, you know, X, Y, and Z out of the journey. So as a business, if you say you're doing it, stick to it and do it. We need to embrace maybe more of the digital side of things. It's coming, it's in care already. So let's, you know, try and excite the next generations coming up to think about what the role actually looks like. I had an interesting conversation this week with an employer who said, when I speak to prospective, I suppose, students coming into the workforce, instead of saying that it's a career in care, would you like to one day own a business that had a turnover of X, that managed a team of X, that had a budget of this, that was responsible for X, Y, and Z? And everybody got really excited about it, because as a business, they were like, oh, that really speaks to what I'd like to do. And then to find out at the end of it, that's health and social care. You know, this is what it can lead to, this whole leadership progress, the whole platform in terms of how you embrace that and go up the pathways and just improve the development side of it. Once that's embraced fully, the attraction bit comes in, and then people will stay with you because you did what you said you were going to do. And I think that's important for employers. If you say you're going to do it, do it.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. And Paul?
Yeah, hi. Similar to Kirsty, the reality is within kind of education retention, we know that workforce attrition rate is high. We know that there are challenges around the overall funding of support with training and development. But from an employer's perspective, I'd encourage them to look externally to outside providers that can offer a lot of this support for very little investment. So if we think about the development of career pathways, the professionalization, you know, of those career pathways, there are organizations out there that will come into your business and support you, provide an infrastructure that would work very successfully within those sectors. What that then leads into is your ability to start developing your workforce planning, which creates significant amount more stability around where you go and what you do, allows you to actually be proactive around your recruitment pipelines and your recruitment support. And you know, with the underlying principle that recruitment is not a one-off task, it's ongoing, it's continuous. It needs to be there, you know, supporting the development of the workforce at all particular stages. And in addition to that, you can't get away from a retention perspective, the importance of culture and support within the organizations. So what are you doing to really embed that positive, proactive culture in a supportive way? And again, linking that back actually to the previous question around commissioning, one of the big things that I believe would make a difference is longer term contracts, giving organizations, giving providers the ability to plan for the future, gives them the confidence to do that based on, you know, future forward contracts, and creating that visibility builds this more sustainable platform that allows you to invest today for the successful future of the business moving forward. But, you know, the one thing for me would be look externally, talk to education providers, talk to training providers, talk to them about what we can do, you know, to come in and support, develop those frameworks, those career pathways that will encourage people to stay for longer, but also fundamentally help support the improvement of the level of service that you're providing. Really important.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very helpful. And Lara?
Thank you. You stole my thunder, Paul. I was going to talk very much about the importance of culture, and which links also to what Kirsty was saying about if you say you're going to do something as an employer, then do it. And I think there is so much to be said about diversity and embracing people in their true, authentic selves, enabling them to be who they are. And over the last few years, certainly we at LDC have spent a lot of time really trying to make sure that we really embrace those agendas that support diversity, whatever aspect of that it may be. And what we found is we've really increased retention, and we didn't really do it for a purpose. We were doing it in the early stages because it was the right thing to do. And it's this awful kind of culture that the world is in at the moment, without wanting to get too political, where there can be some really nasty things thrown around and said. And we wanted to make sure that people that worked with us feel as safe as the people we're supporting. So I think that's been a really, really important thing. And also that living and breathing what you do. So, for example, we make sure that the people we support are very much involved in decision making, and there's the equity across the organisation. Many of them work in our head office alongside people that are employed externally, and they also are paid. So we're trying to create this culture where everybody matters and everybody represents. And I also want to say something that's probably a little bit controversial, but I think needs to be said more. We absolutely want to always support people, ensure people have the good training to be able to do a fantastic job. But there are rogue individuals who do gravitate to the care sector, and actually they will try and prey on vulnerable people. And I think that the DBS system really lets us down because we don't have the ability to really robustly bar people. And this could link into also the argument for having a PIN structure where people are registered, because we see locally that there are people that perhaps aren't designed for the care sector and who may not intend to make bad decisions, but do make bad decisions, which has a negative consequence on vulnerable adults. And they shouldn't be working in the care sector. And it's actually very, very challenging to ensure those people don't remain in the care sector. In spite of great training and all the things you can do to be supportive. So I do think that's something we need to recognise, that it's not for everybody, and a better way to bar those rogue individuals that come with bad intention to the sector.
Thank you very much, Lauren. At CBWC, and before us at CWC, been campaigning for a register for care workers for various reasons. One of them is to be able to say this person shouldn't work in care because DBS isn't enough, and somebody can walk away from a setting losing the job there because of misconduct, and they can find another job somewhere else, and that's it. You wouldn't know. So that's very difficult. But obviously registration around supporting care workers with things that others have mentioned, training and development, and having a pathway. The DHSC Skills for Care working on a pathway is being piloted, but how do you actually apply it without having some sort of system? And even going back to COVID, no ID for a workforce, that was a huge problem. I was still working a bit as a home care worker at the beginning of COVID. Nobody would let me in through a queue at a shop even though I had a letter from my employer, I had my work ID, but because it wasn't the NHS ID, nobody was interested. And I was there for an hour visit to see somebody. I had to do shopping for them. And I spent 45 minutes of that hour waiting in a queue because nobody would let me through. So there are so many different things that connected this kind of professionalization through registration that are really, really important. Daniel.
Yeah, I think that, again, I come from the point, there's a lot of people on the call who are better qualified than me to actually to look at the structure of care workers. But one thing I do, coming from my point, I work a lot with technology. It's come home to me that one of the things that we can do is show people, and I think various people have attested to it, the range of jobs that you can actually do in care. For example, in Scotland, they're looking at the care technologist at the moment as a specific role. Now, that might not be the way to go. And I think, who was it? I think it might have been Kirsty saying that, there are business skills as well which can come in, so we can attract a wide range of people if you get the right basic skills and know, as Atia says, what it means to work with people, and then you can take that on in various areas. So I just think there's something about realizing that there's a wider attraction to what we do than just people who traditionally want to work in care, because I think there's more skills that they can take on as part of it. It's an exciting start to something that could build in various ways, in so many ways, and to enthuse people on that front would be better. And Laura speaks a lot better on this than me, but I really feel there's a post in there for people to see the range of things that you can do and the exciting things it can lead to, as well as staying with care workers. You did, Carolina, but you're an example, Carolina. Look what you're doing now. You've taken, and your basis is in care work. So there's lots of things that we can attract people on, not just for the future thing, but what they can do now.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I don't think I'd want to be taking care workers out from care work into charity work, but it's not a bad way to go. Debbie.
Thanks, Carolina. I'm probably repeating some of what's been said earlier, but I think, leaving the funding issue aside, the recruitment and retention areas are some of the biggest challenges that we as organisations and providers and individuals are facing in this sector now. And I kind of look back. My own mum actually was a carer, and so I grew up in that arena. And she used to support a lot of individuals, both in care settings and in their own homes. And for me, I had quite an early awareness of that. That was part of something that I was brought up in. But I know someone else talked on the call earlier on, and I was reading an article this week. And I think the education piece, so starting early in schools and making people aware that care work is a really valuable profession. And it links to a point that I think Atia made earlier on about the stigma. And I think that's quite interesting, because actually making people aware that this is a career that people can progress. Daniel made the point about you earlier on, but I think it's really important that we actually work in schools and colleges and equip people. I was reading an article this week from a peer in the sector who's actually a qualified social worker, but had gone into talking his daughter's school a couple of years ago and talked about, what do you know about being a care worker? What do you know about social care? And there are lots of blank faces. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us in organisations, in training organisations, in business to actually really create that awareness and really promote the valuable work of care, and where people, if they want to have a career, what that could look like, and really get people to understand that. I think on the retention piece, I can't remember who talked about it, but I think culture and support, again, is that really important for any organisation. We're doing a lot in my organisation about well-being. Again, Atia referenced before in her role and the creep in her role about everything that she's been asked to do, and we're doing lots on well-being for people in the organisation, because again, that whole piece about when you're a care worker, everything that you're exposed to every day, the things that you're supposed to deal with, and I think that emotional resilience is really, really important. So well-being for any organisation, I think linking back to supporting individuals, is an area that companies really need to think about and invest in.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I've said earlier this week, and I always say it, should start really in primary schools. My daughter learned last year about Florence Nightingale. It would be nice if kids learned about care workers as well. Michelle.
Hi, thank you for bringing me back in. Debbie, following on from what you just said, here at Prosperity Care, we've invested heavily in well-being. We actually have a holistic room in our office where we have a professional masseuse, where our carers, our service users, our office staff, everybody has access to that. It's heavily subsidized. Our induction training is 4 weeks long, which is very unusual nowadays. You know, some people just do primarily online and might come in and do meds and moving and handling, but we do 2 weeks face-to-face, 1 week e-learning, and then 1 full week, which can be extended depending on which service users and individuals you're working with. And we have proof and evidence that is working well, because our retention rate of staff is 98.5. So having that investment, which costs money, actually saves money in the new advertising, the recruitment process, and the induction process. Obviously, we still have that ongoing because we're an expanding business, as everybody is, but we're not having that leaky bucket effect. And it's proven to work incredibly well for us.
Thank you, Michelle. That's very interesting, because I think that's what, well, commissioners, first of all, don't understand that, for example, a higher pay rate help retention. But it is this, 98.5, that's an amazing rate of retention, isn't it? And I think you're recognizing that all the other measures that you put in place, that yes, they cost money, but they still cost you less than constant revolving door and retraining and training and training and people leaving and everything else. So thank you. Right, I'm going to move us on to the next question. Actually, Atia, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Could you share, if you're okay with that, your perspective on recruitment and retention in the sector?
Yes,
please?
yeah. I'm sorry. I was actually trying to unmute myself. My
No,
phone is playing off. I'm so sorry today. I'm just late in everything. Yeah, I was actually there was a question popping up in my head, and not now. I mean, since I have started working in domiciliary care, that's how I started. There are a lot of, and I'm not talking about nursing home and care homes, because I haven't recently worked in nursing home or care homes. I've been working in domiciliary care, and then recently with a private client. When I was working in domiciliary care in the community, and the question was popping in my head all the time, because I used to work with the carers who had experience of 13 years, and they have been doing their NVQ2, NVQ3, and all these trainings as well. And whenever they will speak to the higher management that they want to apply for any senior management role or as a manager or something, they will always be shut down by just giving them an increment of maybe 30p extra per hour, because you have done so and so training, and you are a senior carer now, and they will be very happy with that title, that we are senior carers. And there is very less opportunity of progression as well, and I mean, personally, I don't understand, and I just want to know from a care agency owner's perspective, that why they do not give this opportunity to the carers they already have if they want to grow on the management ladder. Most of them, they left, even changed the profession. When I left, I had a very dear friend, and she was really, she was so keen, and she wanted to do something better, for her family and kids. But she always say, like, I cannot work and function like this. I have experience of 13 years as a care worker. I've done my NVQ 2, 3, whatever, and I want to do better. But she never have been given any opportunity. And I mean, I don't understand why the agencies or companies, they're very reluctant in promoting people on the senior levels. I mean, there was I think one of the, Carolina, if I'm wrong, you can correct me, one of the meetings with DHSC we attended, that they wanted to launch a program or something, which is a graduate program, so somebody can do actually health and social care degree and come as a manager. I don't know if is my
No, I
misunderstanding.
think that, no, there was a different idea at one point that was getting pushed very strongly, of having graduates of any degree
Yeah,
come and become social care managers without
managers. Yeah.
experience in social care previously. That was
Y-
similar to what happens in the education sector of the police.
Yes, yeah. And I'm not totally against it. I really appreciate people who are doing graduations and they're going to the universities, and if they want to come and, just get a job as a manager. But what about the people who already have got that much experience under the belt, and they have actually face-to-face real life experiences, ups and downs, the challenges they have faced, why these people are not given any opportunity? I mean, including myself, the place where I have been working, I've been promised a manager role for past actually more than 2 years, and I'm still working as a manager but not being paid, no title, nothing. And anything comes, I'll put my hands up. Yes, I will help. Yes, I can do this. Yes, but when it comes to management as actually a manager, she will be very reluctant to even have a discussion on those levels. So I don't know, there is a big question mark why agencies are very reluctant in promoting their own people or having this idea of hiring graduates as managers. I'm not happy with that, I must say.
Thank you, Atia. Very, very helpful. I don't think the program got anywhere, to my knowledge, but I'll let you know if I hear otherwise. Veronica.
Thank you.
Very good point, Athia. I was just going to say that at Avante Care and Support, we have seen a lot of progression. And it's probably one of the reasons why retention for us is also very good. Because if you join us as a carer, it doesn't stop you from being a manager. And actually, a few of our managers and deputies started as carers. And so it's something that I've really pushed for. We launched a fast track, I think it was 2 years ago or last year now. We launched a fast track pilot program for carers who wanted to be seniors. And I checked the stats because I was talking to someone, I think it was last week. 10 out of the 12 that we put on that program have all moved up. So it does work. And it's actually the best way. It's credible because they've learned on the floor. They understand what happens on the floor. But then we then have to develop the other skills they need. So skills around being commercial, for example, the leadership skills, these are the things that we then plug the gaps for them. So yes, really good points. But I would say there are providers like us doing that, Athia. So maybe you need to look.
Good to know. Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Lara?
Yeah, completely agree. And actually, that's really sad that that's your experience, because I do think there are many providers that do look to grow their own talent and recognise that talent within their own organisations. An observation I would have is that I'm extremely keen to always look for that internal talent and help those individuals to grow and step into roles with more responsibility. What I've observed is that there is often a lack of confidence and a reluctance for people to put themselves forward. So something we tried, and it's been really successful, is 2 or 3 times a year we call it an open session where anybody who works in the organisation, and we're not small but we're not huge, so we employ around 600 people, can come and have a chat separate to any one-to-ones or supervisions or training conversations that they've had about how they want their career to look. And through that, we've identified people that were perhaps a little bit below the radar that have now gone on to be deputy managers and managers. And one of the ways that we managed to increase confidence, as well as offering some additional training, is to give people the opportunity to step into those roles on a secondment basis, so that they didn't necessarily have to fully commit themselves, because there's that reluctance, am I going to be stepping away too much from the people that we support, which is obviously the passion of that daily work and interaction with people. So they get an opportunity to try it. I have to say most of those people, in fact, all of those people, have now gone on to secure full-time roles, but it's been a really nice way to test the waters. And we've got 16 registered managers, and only one of those was an external recruit, because we absolutely do commit to ensuring that we do nurture that internal talent. So please, Atia, ask your employer to think about looking internally. Creates a much more robust, and it reinforces that culture stuff so much as well.
Thank you, Kirsty, and then we'll move on to the next and last question.
Thank you. So I know, again, and I think somebody else mentioned this, as organisations, please liaise with the local training company that you use, or the training provider that you use, because I know for us, we do a inverted commas graduate programme, but this is about, it's linked to the work-based learning. So how do you take an individual on a journey for the 5 years from level 2 to 3? The gap's getting bigger, unfortunately, from level 2 to 3 with the new apprenticeship that's coming out, because they've replaced the diploma with the adult social care certificate regulated. So again, we put a free bridging course in, because employers can't afford to bridge the gap now from 2 to 3 on all cases. Then how do we get a level? I mean, this is like a pathway journey. So how do you take somebody from new to care within the pathways right up to management level over a planned period of time? So you could have somebody at you like yourself that maybe is working at that more senior level. So you could join the graduate programme that we run as a training company and work through a really strong process of, I'm going to start at this level, these are the tasks, then I'm going to move to this, then I move to that, which what it helps organisations do is strategically plan for their progression, where, and then it's almost, it can become easier to recruit for care workers than it can for strong managers. So that's why most places will follow that. And any training company worth the salt will take you on that journey, but link it to work-based so that we're not discriminated against people that have worked in that sector, because hey, that's what I did. Like I said, 16-year-old, and then I was in charge of a £22 million business by the time I was 25 as a registered manager. That's all I've ever done. And it wasn't about the money. It was that I'd grown up in my teen years to my mid-20s in this fantastic company that I worked there for 13 years and would probably still be there had they not sold the business at the end. It's all I had ever done. So I'm with you on that, Atia, but yeah, there's people out there putting these progression plans in place with employers and with the sector to get the homegrown talent and to keep it.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. Right, I'm going to move us on to the next, and like I said, last question. Should there be a lot of interesting ideas and opinions here? So this is, what makes you hopeful? Or what innovations or good practice have you seen that gives you a hope and makes you feel positive about the future of social care? Let's finish on that. So who would like to go first? Kirsty, go.
I think Daniel snuck his hand up just before me, but
go for it, Kirsty. Go for it.
We might end up agreeing on most of this anyway. After we've said everything that we've said today, I've got to be honest, everything makes me hopeful. And that is the spirit of health and social care. It's evolving, it's innovative, the technology that's coming in, always the people. I love getting a new care package. I love it because I get to meet another person, another family, absolutely everything about it. The regulations there, and I know, but the way CQC are having to start to change, we all went through that, you know, the process that CQC put in place. I'm hopeful now that things are changing there. I was maybe a bit sad about where care seemed to go during COVID and after COVID. Yet I'm hopeful because you guys are all talking, we're talking now, we're talking to the right people, you know, with direct lines to Department of Health and Social Care. Everything that comes as maybe, I want to say a weakness, but I think that's the wrong word, a challenge in health and social care. We're so good at turning that into an opportunity. I'm constantly hopeful in this sector, sorry. I just think it's exciting. It's one of the largest employers that we've got. And if we do get our voice together, I can't even imagine what care will look like in the next 5 years. It used to be, I used to look at it in 7-year cycles or 10-year cycles. I daren't even leave it that long these days, you know. A couple of years makes a massive difference. So I would say to anybody else that's looking at this sector, within the sector or around it, watch this space, because it frightens me and excites me exactly what this sector can do. So I'm quite generic, as in I'm hopeful about everything and excited about it. So I'll shut up now, Daniel. You come in and be a bit more specific than I
Go for it. Let's carry on that optimism, that enthusiasm, Kirsty, that just comes out the screen at me. It's just two specific things I'm cautiously optimistic about, but I am optimistic. One is the 10-year health plan. The 10-year health plan, although it didn't mention enough about social care, it's down to a lot of it is down to neighbourhoods and people getting care closer to home. Lots of different messages, but that's really an opportunity for social care to actually say we can actually help achieve the goals of the 10-year health plan. Now, we're not here just to fulfill the goals of a health plan, but it has focused people's minds on what's possibilities in neighbourhoods. So therefore, and one of the ways we can actually do that is there's also the Baroness Casey's Commission at the moment on social care. Now, although that might be up there in the ether and not really, people might not see it as relevant day to day, but she is actually listening to everyone's ideas. So everyone here on this call, including us, can actually be in touch with the commission and say, this is what we think should be happening. So I think there's a real time when we're looking about, bringing together all we've talked about today, about the branding of care, about the positive things we can do, about delegated health tasks. We can actually fulfill the goals of a better society and community. And I would encourage you to write to Baroness Casey and say, this is what we can do in care, and we can link to the 10-year health plan and achieve the best for the country because of the resources and the assets we've got. So I am optimistic. And even though the Baroness Casey is reporting in 2026, first of all, and then in 2028, I don't think that should put us off, because, as Kirsty said, we can plan for 5-10 years ahead to make sure that social care takes its real place at the table in creating a better society and community. And that's what care workers are all about. So I am optimistic.
Thank you very much, Daniel. And Debbie?
Yeah, I think this calls it just demonstrates, doesn't it, really? I think that there's so much to be positive about. I think, it's the best it's ever been for me, the sector, around the collaboration. So people are really talking and engaging. You've got a cross section of people on today's panel. I'm sure there's lots of people listening in with similar views, similar struggles, similar challenges. So there's a lot that makes me hopeful. The collaboration piece, I think, is probably the best it's ever been. I think the people piece, you've seen it and heard it today on the screen, but there's that real resilience, isn't there, amongst people that have been in the sector, delivering services, at the forefront of services, commissioning services, providing services. I think, as a group of individuals, we're really resilient, and we're really passionate, and that kind of screams through on the call today, and I'm sure through the panels that I'll watch that have happened previously in the week. We've talked again about the professionalisation of the workforce, again, really, really key. The whole brand, kind of breaking down some of those barriers. I think that makes me really hopeful. Technology, we've talked a lot around other groups about technology, and I think that's really, really key for us as organisations and businesses to drive improvements. But to go back to a point that I think somebody made earlier on about the person, and actually making things even more person-centred. So technology will enable all of us as organisations and individuals to be able to harness the power of technology to be able to really deliver what we all want to deliver in terms of bringing the care back to the individual. And I think also about some of the changes, we talked before, there are some really great examples of good commissioning up and down the country. CQC are obviously changing and adapting, our regulators, so that's really important. So I think there's lots to be hopeful about. And linking to Daniel's point about the 10-year health plan, I think that's a real opportunity for us around local neighbourhoods to create that as organisations as well.
Thank you very much, Debbie. And Lara?
I'm not going to be as academic in my answer, although, of course, I do agree with everything that's being said around the policy pieces and the changes to the system in its broadest sense. I think the thing that keeps me optimistic, in spite of everything, whether it be COVID from a few years ago, the ongoing onslaught of financial challenges from the government, or change in policies, or CQC, is we're actually quite smug as a sector on our day-to-day, because we get to do, and I stand and say this to everybody, the best job in the world. We get to work with human beings who are awesome, whatever part of the sector we are in. And we get to do that and get paid for it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be paid. We absolutely should, and we should be paid more to do it because it is a skilled job. But we don't have, if I was trying to sell trainers, or if I was trying to sell, I don't know, ketchup or something, I'm looking around the room, see what I can see. It's a really tough sell, actually, to be able to work with the remarkable people we get to work with every single day is an awesome, awesome privilege. And that is what keeps us all here, I think, is those moments that we still get, and they may be fewer the higher up the chain you go, but those moments we get to be around those individuals, their families, and of course the awesome workforce who are also progressing and achieving great things every day is what keeps my spark alive. So I think we should hold on to that and be proud of that and shout more about that.
Thanks a lot, Lara and Veronica.
Thanks, Lara. Lara just said quite a few of the things that I wanted to say. I love the social care sector because it is a creative sector. You know, we talk a lot about not having enough funding, yet we're able to do so much. And it makes me think about creativity in business. Sometimes the truth is that businesses that have all these pressures perform even better. And so for me, that's the opportunity that we continue to do what we do best. And our people definitely are sort of greatest asset for me when I go around our homes and services and I see the passion every single day. I tell myself I have to do better. I have to do more. I want to thank Daniel Carson because he's also one of these amazing people we have in the sector that have the ability to bring people together. And that gives me hope, you know, that we will continue to have these opportunities to discuss, to network, and come up with solutions for social care. So lots of positives, and technology is a good one too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from anybody else? Graham?
I think the technology piece is quite exciting. If we look at how things have moved quite quickly the last few years, and some of the stuff we're seeing in homes now is quite revolutionary. And so I think, you know, you think forward to another 3 or 5 years, what will sort of the care setting look like, and how people interact within a home and move within the home. So I think that's quite exciting. But I suppose homes have got to adapt with it, and I suppose often we see it time and time again where perhaps homes don't move with the times and they then perhaps fall behind. So I suppose people need to kind of embrace with the technology.
Thanks a lot, Graham. Right. Unless there's anything else from anybody else, I'd like to say thank you very much to all of you for your time today. Thank you to everybody who watched and those that will watch in the future. Very important conversation. And let's hope for a better future for social care. And you've shared some very good, hopeful opinions about what will happen, what could happen. So yes, to the better future of social care. And thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of the day.